File celebrity divorce of Kevin Costner and his estranged wife, Christine Baumgartner, continues to dominate the headlines. After a 24-year relationship, the split is getting costly and messy. Court documents showing Costner's ex is fighting the ironclad prenup for her kids. And joining us right now is high-profile family and divorce attorney Randy Kessler. Randy, good morning. Good to see you again.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, so it's nice to have you back in studio and on the couch.
Goodbye, COVID.
Goodbye, COVID. You are out of here. Well, let's talk about this because everybody else is. Christine is asking for $250,000 a month. Now, right now, it says that she can get about $38,000. Her kids are 14, 15, 13, 14, and 16. So what do you think? Does she really think that she can get this amount of money?
If you don't ask, you don't get, right? And the judge's job is not really to decide, what are their minimal needs? This is a family that was together, living a certain standard of living. And in the average case, you want to do as little harm to the children. So how do you keep the children's lives the same? You make sure that they can be in the same sort of standard of living. She's got a big burden, though, to try to prove that she needs $250,000 to keep their life unchanged. She could probably do it on less, but it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
I mean, this seems excessive even for someone as, like everybody knows, like, Costner. I mean, it just seems really excessive that she's asking for this type of money.
Well, that's because we look at it when they're getting divorced. But when they're married, nobody's looking at it saying, how much money are you all spending as a family? And I bet if you looked at it when they were spending money as a family, we'd have the same feelings. How much money you guys are spending? How much every month? So it's just now there's sunlight on it and everyone's seeing it and looking at it and judging. It is a lot, especially when the average person across the world gets by on 1/1000th of that,
right?
Maybe 1/100,000th of that.
Well, does the court just use its own judgment when it's thinking about what's best for the children?
So every state has what we call guidelines, a starting point, and they look at the income, but there are no real guidelines for the uber rich, right? If you make more than $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, the guidelines are out the window. You get some basic child support that meets the needs, and then the judge goes with their heart and they say, this is what this family needs to make the children sort of as if their parents didn't get divorced. It's a weird situation. She's got the uphill battle. She's got to show the judge a budget that says, I need this to make sure the children have X, Y, and Z, trips to Europe, whatever it is, expensive clothes. And they're arguing to a judge who makes, $100,000, $200,000 a year, not a month.
So basically, the judge is going to have to look at their needs versus their wants, and then maybe just add a little bit extra to their wants, depending on what their
or add a lot.
Or add a lot when you're talking about $250,000. In the real world, what do courts usually look at when they're thinking about what a child needs and when there's a split?
That's a great question. So they start with the guidelines and they say, what are we supposed to do when mom earns $30,000 a year and dad earns $80,000 a year? And there's a number that the system spits out. And then the judge looks at what do they typically spend. Each side has a budget. And the judge just does some math and says, dad needs this much to live on his own and he's going to pay this much in child support or vice versa. And they come up with a creative number, but it's not really science, it's more of an art. You just go with your feeling that, this mom needs this much or this dad needs this much. $3,000 a month is sort of what we really see as the max for most average people. $1,000 a month is still a lot to some people. And the really wealthy, Georgia, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month.
Really?
California, $25,000, $30,000 more. But Georgia's not. Those of you who are worried about paying child support, Georgia's one of the lower states.
Randy, we've seen you in some of these cases. You are a high-profile attorney. So I'm thinking that you have to really have a good attorney if you're going through something like that as well.
It doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt.
It's knowing the law, and it's knowing the judge, and it's knowing how to persuade, right? We have to say, you got to be really good to persuade a judge that your client needs $250,000 a month in child support, and they are going to make a decent ask for it.
A lot of people at home are probably thinking, too, doesn't she have a prenup? How does that come into play when you're talking about children, though?
That's very interesting because prenups cannot deal with children because you can't say, if you and I get married in 10 years, here's how much I'll pay for child support because who knows where I'll be in 10 years and what kind of income earner I'll be. So that's not in the prenup. So that may be the only thing they can argue about. So that's why that's a really good question. Prenup says she gets X, he gets Y. but it doesn't cover child support. So that may be the big, it seems like that is the big fight.
Can you add that in? Is that a way to, or no, that's just not?
It's got to be part of the divorce, but it cannot be in the prenup because court, you cannot pre-decide what children are going to get because you never know what the system's going to be like when they get divorced.
What's the highest child support that you have seen in the state of Georgia?
So we had one years ago where it was $28,000 a month for two children. We've had some others that I can't really talk about. but those are extreme in Georgia, so we don't really see $250,000 a month. I don't think I've seen one of those in Georgia.